And Glory, do you want to lead in?
Okay, all right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for making it to today's webinar. We are very excited to have on the call not one, but two thought leaders all the way from the US who have graciously consented to share their time and their expertise to help us all learn one or two more things about accessing the United States market. So it's with great pleasure that I introduce the founder and principal of the International Business Accelerator, Chris Lynch and Michael McClune. So you're both very welcome.
Thank you, Glory.
Thank you, and good evening. Thank you for taking part of your evening, particularly on a Saturday night. I'm Christopher Lynch. I'm the founder of the International Business Accelerator. And what we do is we focus on taking companies into global markets. It's a not-for-profit organization in Southern California, principally Los Angeles. We've been going at this about 4 years. We've worked with about 45 different companies of all kinds of different technologies, states of growth, mostly on the smaller side, anywhere from pure startup up to mid-sized product companies. And so we've gained from this quite a bit of expertise, both in helping US companies go international, but also helping companies come into the US market. Michael.
Yeah, I'm Michael McClune. Thank you, Glory, for having us. And we're always excited to help foreign companies understand the nuances and the practicalities of entering the United States market. The potential is tremendous, but the tricks and the complications and complexities certainly need to be followed. So I'm a business owner of over 20 years, self-employed. I've owned, managed, and sold tech companies and service companies. Last company I had sold my share in was importing dietary supplement from European Union, and I was looking for my next thing, and I saw Chris was doing something that nobody else was doing. And as an entrepreneurial minded person, you see something that nobody else is doing, and everyone around the world needs help and assistance. So I teamed up with him, and we grew the accelerator up into the Los Angeles market, into all around California now, and now we have clients on a global scale. So I'm the startup guy, very guerrilla bootstrap approach, and Chris is the very high level multinational consultancy perspective. So we like to think that we bring a complete approach for any founder.
And yeah, thank you, Michael. And just a little bit more on that. My background is I'm an economist by training. I was with the U.S. State Department as a diplomat. I was stationed in Latin America and in Europe. So I have lots of experience working with companies around the world and their particular problems. So let's start into this. And then one of the things that we always like to start off with, that global business is like a little bit like playing 3D chess. In your own market, you have on the one side of the board, you have your business law, your legal system, and on the other side, you have your business culture. You know how to make the moves from one square to the other square. And so we understand how those moves are made. When you go global, when you go cross-border, you have another layer of complexity, another country's legal system, and another country's business culture. It's complicated, but it's not that complex to do. You just have to simply sit down and think through the moves. And that's what we like to think of ourselves and the International Business Accelerator as, working with companies to make that moving from square to square easier. So I guess the first thing we say, I don't know how many of you are actually working in product companies, and how many of you are going to be providing sort of a strict service. So let's go on the assumption that a number of you are looking to ship products to the United States. And sort of as an overarching adage for all of you is that we really recommend you work with an established logistics company, like a DHL, like a FedEx. Those will be people who are used to getting through, understanding the regulations and getting through all the ins and outs of importing things to the United States. Post 9/11, the US has really made the security at the ports much tighter. And as a result, there's a whole series of additional checks. If you work through an established company, they know how to get those things through. And sometimes if you're working with smaller companies or even trying to do it yourself, you may run into problems. And we're in Africa and we're in the United States, and it's hard to communicate and to actually work through the problems. All right, so let's talk about what we talk in our approach, how we deal with companies. And the first part is that you have to get yourself ready for new markets. That means reviewing your online presence, your systems, principally your processes and your suppliers. Okay, so you have to make sure that these people are going to be ready to provide you the material that you need, so that you're then able to, as you grow quickly, to actually keep up with you. And it's also time for you to identify new resources. Now, we've done a number of things with advanced tech companies, and one of the things, the tips we picked up from working with blockchain companies, we did a training cohort with the University of Southern California, USC, on blockchain technologies. And one of the things they all have is what they call a data room. In other words, you have all of your documents together, for example, like in a Dropbox or Box. Why? And Box is kind of preferable because it can be encrypted. But that way, when somebody asks for your articles of incorporation, your background on the company, data that you'll need, for example, on banking and so forth, you've got it there in one particular place. So these are some things that you take care of in advance. You make sure that you're ready. It'll just save you time as you start going down the road. And as always, if you have questions, let us know. We're going to leave time at the end to talk through all of this. And I've seen a number of you already put things in the chat box, so we will gather those at the end and try to answer those questions. I think a big issue here is how to factor in the cross-cultural dimensions. Okay, it's a big part of that is understanding how consumers in the United States make decisions, and making those decisions is it's a market here in the United States right now that is looking for immediate answers. They're very much savvy on what's the newest trends and so forth. They're willing to actually make take a risk on new products. They like things from different parts of the world. I mean, they're curious. And as we'll get to later, the more that you can tell a story about your product or your service, the more that you'll get people intrigued on that. So it's understanding how the consumers really make their market decisions, and you have to put yourself in their sense. I think you'll get a lot from looking around the web, looking at what other the business articles about your particular sector. A second one is how to negotiate in the U.S. context. In the U.S. context is that we are, one of the things we do in terms of our training when we do things in person is we talk about, relationships, cultures, and sort of getting down to business cultures. And the United States is one that's very much looking for getting straight to the end of things, being in terms of negotiations, laying out the parameters in a very small level. In other words, negotiating, but it's over a very limited range. And a lot of U.S. firms, a lot of U.S. consumers just don't like it, or get wary of when it's negotiating. And this is something that's in a lot of other countries around the world. You're also going to have to deal with stereotypes. People have stereotypes of, something coming from Africa or Nigeria or wherever it is, and you're going to have to learn how to negotiate, to work around those stereotypes. More importantly, it's going to be the best way to do that is by doing your business, being responsible, complying with everything that you promise, and doing it in the best manner that you can. Michael, any sort of thoughts on the cross-cultural dimensions there?
Well, I mean, United States is a huge market as far as the potential of the sales. One of the things people around the world either don't understand or to their detriment forget when they enter the market is the United States is made up of 50 individual states. And that's from regulatory to compliance and culturally. And Chris and I live in California. The majority of the population in California is Latino. And that surprises some people. Minnesota is very European and white, yet in the capital it has, 40 or 50,000 Ethiopians right in the middle of the capital. So it's very diverse, and it takes a lot of attention to make sure that the message arrives correctly to everybody. Nigeria, I think you guys have an advantage because you are technically advanced, I would think, more so than the rest of the continent. If I believe the first African unicorn came out of Nigeria. InterSwitch is from Nigeria, I believe, right? So you guys have a lot to build on. So it's just something that you have to stay vigilant of.
And that's the point too, is that what businesses and consumers are just waking up to in the United States is the tremendous leaps in development that have taken place in Africa over the past 10 years, particularly since the introduction of smartphones. And it's time and again, this is listed as, people are forward looking at, say, this is going to be the next growth area of the world. And people are curious about what the products are there, what they can get from the market and so forth. So it's a great time for you to be thinking about the United States market. We're in the midst of a crisis right now with the coronavirus that will take time to play out, and there'll be a lot of upending of traditional ways of doing business. So this is the perfect time to get your products out there, get people thinking differently. We'll definitely be moving away from the model of buy everything from China, and they'll be open to all kinds of new supply chains, new products, new ways of doing things. All right, so next we have to sort of get down to brass tacks, which are identifying specific opportunities. And so the first one is, particularly if you're doing a product, is to understand the what it's going to your cost actually get the product there. And that includes tariffs, any sort of taxes. In the United States, we do not have a value-added tax, but we do have sales taxes, which are collected by state and local governments. They operate somewhat like a sales tax, but like a value-added tax. If you're doing e-commerce, there will be an expectation that you would be collecting those, although even as a foreign company, although it's going to be harder to enforce, quite frankly, but it's still that expectation. And to understand the trade barriers. Review next of all, you have to be, and all that information give you an idea how much the product's going to cost when you get it to the U.S. market. to your final consumers. Then to review the product standards, safety requirements, labeling requirements. We'll talk a lot more about that. At the beginning, we talked about logistics partners and the importance of having one of those. So when you have all of those three together, you can start answering the question, how competitive is your product versus the other products that are in the US market? And generally what we try to put in three categories. One is that you're a low cost product or service. Two, you're like the other broadly competitive, that you're like the other products in the market having specific features, it's equivalent pricing and so forth. And finally, if you're a high price product, but you have definite quality advantages, that's another way of marketing all of that. Now, I know I've put a lot of information into the slide, and let me give you some links that will help you break down some of these issues, particularly with the tariffs and with the standards and the labeling. So if you want to find out how much your product is going to be facing in terms of tariffs, go to this particular site. You'll need to describe your product. That will give you your harmonized system number. If you already know that from other work that other international trade that you've been doing, the harmonized system numbers are the same all around the world. So if you know the first 4 digits of it, you will be able to find what it is in the United States. This website also gives you a lot of information about how much is being imported in each category and from which country. This will give you an idea in terms, particularly for your import competition. There are also some interesting analyses. There's one about sort of trade and investment flows. They focus particularly on sub-Saharan Africa. So I think you'll find that one to be particularly useful. The standards in the United States, generally the world's sort of in 2 different camps when it comes to standards, although they are rapidly merging. The first would be the EU marks and basically things that have been approved for sale in the European market. That's largely self-certifying operation. And the ones that are for the United States are United Laboratories. Now, a number of the EU accepted standards are acceptable also for the United States with minimal additional testing or just recertification for the United States. If you want a complete list for your product, what kind of standards we'll have to do, we can give, take a look at this link and you can find out what are the issues that are going to be facing within the United States. We do recognize this, the standards from other organizations, and there is an effort to standardize things across various countries, but it's still not quite there. Michael, why don't you tell the story about that one company we're working with in terms of they're trying to get a UL standard?
Oh, the Australian.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, he had a clean tech product, and we helped him bring it to the United States and do some pilot programs and first sales with the city of Los Angeles and the county of Los Angeles. Excuse me. So he figured out what he needed, and he went back home and worked with his manufacturer of choice in the US and with the UL certification at home. And Chris, remind me, wasn't that the time where the United States was battling with other countries around the world with import-export trade?
Yeah, there were some bilateral issues, but it was also within UL itself.
Right. Well, it took about 9 months to do because I think the Australian agency and the U.S. agency didn't want to work together. So, these are the realities of international trade sometimes. But yeah, for him, it was a small switch. But it took quite some time to figure out exactly how it worked in the American system and North American system. It took quite a bit of money, several $1,000s, if I remember correctly, just for one little switch.
So, but anyway, you'll need those to sell into the market, particularly
right. Otherwise, you can't.
Products. So, and again, if you have questions on those, we had our contact information at the beginning. We can help you think through these, although we're not the experts. A lot of what we've done in terms of our work is that we really build up a good network of the people who are the subject matter experts, and we refer a number of questions to those people. Also, too, I mentioned safety regulations. This is a big issue in the United States, particularly if, say, for example, you were doing with a toy, or even some articles of clothing, anything that's sort of consumer facing. Okay? There are safety regulations in terms of the size. There are labeling ones. For example, if you have your product wrapped in plastic for shipping, you frequently have to have that plastic then marked to keep it out of the hands of children and so forth, and prevent any sort of choking problems. There are regulations on paints and what can be used in that. So there are a lot of these consumer product safety issues. There's thousands and thousands of them, not only at the federal level, but also at the state and the local level. The United States is a society, and you've no doubt heard this, where we love to go to court to sue. And it's a reality, so you have to be aware of these and to show that you've made good faith efforts to comply with all the regulations, laws, standards, and so forth. So for your own particular reputation as a company, then it's really important that you be aware of the regulations. Again, if you've got a good logistics partner, if you have a good partner who's your either your importer or distributor, they can help you work through these laws and make sure that you're complying with all of those. Michael, you want to talk about product labeling and so forth?
Sure. Let me put this in the chat box. Yeah, product labeling, as I mentioned earlier, the United States is made up of 50 different states. All of them have their own regulation of labeling within the state. But for the most part, you can follow the federal guidelines. And it is absolutely essential that you follow every single guideline and you do it correctly. I've seen companies spend money with an expert to put their labeling together and make sure that everything is in metric and imperial, country of origin. There's a uniform code that all products must have, that the governmental agency says, this is pretty much what you should do, and these are the things that we want to see, but they don't tell you exactly how to do it. So there's always a little window where they can say, nah, you did it wrong, and if you send it here, you either have to destroy it or send it back. It's critical if you have a physical product to have everything that's required and also have an expert look at it. Even if there's a question, if you have a Nigerian or African food product and you send it up here and you have all the labeling, you have the ingredients in the correct order, and you have the percentages of the nutritional breakdown, and you have the weights and the measures, and you have the barcode in the correct corner and um, the correct size, and you have the correct font, which is also critical. If they have a question, they will take that product at the border and they'll put it in a warehouse and they will keep it there until they have time to go look at it. Guess what? You pay for that storage in the warehouse, and they choose the warehouse where they put it. So you have no control over which place it goes and how much they charge per day. Frustratingly, it's happened to me, and it happens maybe not frequently, but as a first-time importer, put into your pricing that you're going to have to spend extra money for extra vigilance and extra attention from not only the Border Patrol, but all of the regulatory agencies, the Food and Drug Administration, the Agriculture Department, the tobacco, alcohol, firearms, etc. So spend the money to have an expert review it. My suggestion is if you pay an expert, and we have these in our network, that you pay the price, but ask them for unlimited revisions. You don't want to pay each time they revise something. And don't trust, my suggestion is don't trust your customs broker in your home country to know everything. They may know most of it, but again, if you miss that 1 or 2%, there's always a chance that they'll hold your product. So yeah, I think that's some anecdotal stories to how to approach, particularly with products. Chris, are there specific ones for tech?
Yeah, there even for now we're getting in terms of
drones and military, right?
Yeah, right. There's all sorts of things there for technology products. Even for services, you're going to have to comply to certain, particularly software standards. More importantly, we are now, the United States is now moving into what the European Union is doing in terms of data privacy. And California has a law that just went into effect that's very similar to what goes on in Europe, and that's going to be spreading across the United States.
Yeah, interestingly, California has a harder, more rigid and difficult data governance standard than the federal government. So it's always a shifting sands of regulatory environment. So you always have to keep that in mind. Legal and HR issues, right? So, as Chris mentioned earlier, we do have a reputation here around the world for liking to bring each other to court over the smallest things. That may be true compared to the rest of the world. However, if you put the time and the effort and the energy and into your contracts and your business in the beginning, the whole reason you do that is because the attorneys that work with you make sure that none of the problems arise. Right? So the contracts are all pretty standard here across all 50 states. California is a very, one difference is California is very favorable to the consumer, whereas a state like Delaware on the other side of the country is very friendly to the company, right? They'll always say, well, the company tried their best and that's okay. And in California, they'll say, well, the company didn't try hard enough. And so we're going to side with the consumer and the customer. Trademarks and copyrights and patents, obviously a critical thing, whether you're doing software or service or products. If your company wants to come here, you want to bring the company here, establish a presence, open an office, it's all pretty straightforward. If you are looking for, let's say, capital, venture capital or seed capital or any sort of growth capital, it's very easy for you to transfer your intellectual property from your own company to a U.S. company. So I think that's one of the nice things, that if you want to come to the American market, or the US market and start establishing yourself in North America, you can bring everything here and simply with one document transfer what you've built there in Africa and have ownership here. And that way the VCs and the angels, that's one of the first things they'll look for before they cut you a check. Tax strategy. Taxes is complicated.
Michael, just one last thing on the copyrights. You can basically assert copyright of your own, whatever you have material have, including your website. One little hack that I heard of this last week is to copyright your instruction manuals. Because then that way, if somebody tries to rip off your idea or product, you can say, listen, I already asserted the ownership of this particular idea.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Right. So if you use your logo or your, something tangible or intangible than an idea in the public space, then you can claim a copyright to it, assuming that you're the first one. So that includes colors and logos, ideas, sayings, sounds, etc. Tax strategy, again, I keep coming back to the fact that the United States of America is 50 different regulatory states, and within those states, we have counties, which are the larger areas, and then within the counties, we have cities. And so the city collects tax, and the county collects tax, and the state collects tax, and the federal government collects tax. These are agencies that do not negotiate. You do not want to be late. You do not want to make mistakes. There's no saying, oops, I'm sorry, I'm not from here, I didn't get it. You have to pay on time, and you have to pay what you owe. And there's no other question about it. You don't want those kind of problems. Obviously, we work with KPMG as our tax and accounting partner. So we have no doubt wherever you're from, KPMG has some sort of presence, if not a headquarters in that country. Legal and ethical tripwires, those are more specific to what you're building and what you're creating and the company you run and the product and service that you sell. So we can answer, pardon me, we can answer those questions a little bit later. And building cross-cultural teams is key. Here in Los Angeles, where we are, it's very diverse. For example, right now I'm 2,500 meters up in the air, and Chris is at 0 meters at the beach, and I'm in the mountains, and we're only a couple hours away from each other. And again, in Los Angeles as a metropolitan area, there are more languages spoken in Los Angeles than there are countries in the world. So anywhere you go in America, there should probably be some cultural similarities to where you're coming from and the market and the customer you're selling to. Right? In construction, for example, Europeans prefer the high-tech, very modern units. Whereas in America, in our industry, from what I understand, what I've read, what I've learned, is that we prefer the cheaper ones that are just more rugged and more simplistic. And it behooves you to understand the differences in the cross-cultural expectations in selling, and then also the representatives that you have in your teams. Chris, anything else?
No.
Website, yeah, I think online marketing is pretty similar around the world. Pay attention to the look and feel. Make sure it looks professional. Americans, we are insular. We do believe that the world revolves around America, for better, for worse. For worse, I believe, but that's something that you have to understand and put into your strategy. .coms and .nets are essential. SEO is going to be a little bit different here. My suggestion, my recommendation to anybody coming to the U.S. market is become very specific in who you want to sell to. It's a huge market. We have a tremendous amount of purchasing power. Americans spend a lot of money on a lot of different things, most of which we don't need to, which is a good thing for you, for everyone else around the world. But target it. Make sure that when you come in, you know exactly who you want to sell to and for how much and for how long. and that'll make your life a lot easier and your company a lot more successful. We're very story-based. You know, we're all about Hollywood, so make sure that you have the emotional hook in your story that's connected to your product and your company, and it'll make us. It'll be easier for us to understand what the value proposition is. So, you know, video is every day becoming more and more essential, as it is around the world. Testimonials are key for us. You know, we trust the consumers and our peers and our friends and our family and our own network much more than a corporation. And that's been that way for quite some time, and even more so nowadays. Digital advertising, again, my suggestion is to focus it very specifically on what we call an avatar, who your prospective customer is. You know, I know that WhatsApp is the dominating platform there. It's probably not in the top 4 here. So make sure that your communications, the methodology isn't built for what you're used to. You know, for us, LinkedIn is B2B, Facebook is still B2C, Twitter is not so much for marketing products and companies. It's more ideas, opinions, feelings, and recommendations. So make sure that you pay attention to that. So print is a dying medium, although, you know, unpaid advertising is certainly ties into your testimonials. Public relations is huge. It's huge. It may not move the needle on sales or acquisition or anything that's tangible as far as growth, but the intangible is that you have you know, bipartisan pat on the back or testimonial, someone writing who doesn't know about you so much, and you're not paying them to write good things about you.
If I can just put one thing about print, just an anecdote, though. Sometimes it is important for specific verticals. I know there's one company I've come across from Africa that is particularly been working a number of faith-based corporation markets here in the United States, and it advertises in the church and the other publications. So that's a case where people do look to the print. So you have to understand your market. What works best with your target customers?
Yeah, I mean, trade publications, you know, dedicated to one sector, one vertical, are obviously an efficient way. I still believe that non-paid advertising in those is better than advertising, because you can use that perpetually.
Yeah.
Okay. As you come into this market, you got to figure out how your product's going to get here, how your service, how your platform, how your tech solution is going to arrive, and how it's going to be disseminated. So we work with our clients to sit down and figure out what's probably the best. You know, do you want to sell directly? Do you want to sell, you know, provide licenses from where you are? Would you like to have a training module and have the trainers sell, or sales rep? We always advise that you establish some sales and some customer feedback to make sure that you're comfortable in making the next bigger step. Obviously, a good way to do that is Amazon and eBay. That way you can collect your customer information and you can make sure that you have a market fit. And with that information in that momentum and traction, you can go and try to secure a distributor or an agent or a representative. So there are many different ways to do it. The one thing is, it's probably not going to be the same way that you do it in your home country and the other countries that you've expanded into.
And the thing with somebody, there's a lot of temptation to do everything, say it's through Amazon, which is the largest B2C platform. And so the problem is, if you do everything there, Amazon will kick people off the platform for reasons that are not always apparent. and then suddenly you don't have any presence. So you have to develop multiple presences and channels, as Michael was saying.
Yeah, customer service is probably one of the highest expectations, as far as quality. A company that doesn't respond or support its customers, particularly the new ones, is not going to make it very far. So our recommendation is factor into your cost of expansion. You're going to lose money on a percentage of your first-time buyers, because in this market, traditionally we're wealthy enough, both on the business side and the consumer side, that a little bit here and a little bit there don't matter that much. So a company saying, hey, you're not happy with it, don't send it back, just keep it, and we'll refund your money, is more the norm than saying, okay, send it back to us and we're going to charge you to send it back to us, and then we'll refund the money that you spent. So factor into that equation of how much it's going to cost to come here. A certain percentage of returns and unhappy customers, that it's better to spend a little bit of money not to have an unhappy customer than it is spend more money to get more customers. Again, it's all individual. So access to phone support 24/7 is good. We're moving more and more to chat boxes and chat agents, although still we have a very large elderly population here, and it hasn't caught on with them. So if you're looking to sell from 40 to 75, you're going to need somebody on the telephone, either here locally or around the world. And there are distribution companies that do the pick and pack, they do the fulfillment, they do the customer service, they do the email, all in one. So you can have one agent do everything from distribution of a product or all the customer service here, or you can do it there. It's up to you, and it's usually a matter of cost and quality. So the feedback after the receipt, we are moving more towards a transparent transaction between business and consumer. Everybody wants to see exactly what happens, exactly how everybody feels. So it's important that you get the feedback, you make sure everybody's happy, and of course it's going to make your job easier in the future to know how the market is reacting to your product and service. Right. So, Gloria, are you here listening with us? Because
yeah, I'm here.
So in our initial talks with Gloria and chats and conversations, we, like I'm sure so many other people, found her amazing and energetic, and we thought, wow, we're building this platform to help companies specifically from developing markets tap into the United States market. And it's very risky, but it's very lucrative and profitable if you can do it right. So we were talking to her as we were finishing up this platform, and we said, hey, Gloria, maybe some folks who might be interested in this platform to walk you through the regulatory and the compliance and all these variables that you need. And she said, yeah, I know a lot of people. In fact, I would like to do it, and maybe we could do it together, which was music to our ears. So we're finishing up this course. It's specifically for quick and profitable, yet compliant and safe market entry to the US. So we don't have the specifics yet because we're finalizing it. But as far as the MVP, we're honored that Gloria's interested in doing our first foray into the African continent.
And we're excited about it. It's a lot of the things in terms of the factual content. If you spend a lot of time, you can look around the web and probably find YouTube videos on most of the information. Not all, but most of it. But what really makes a difference is that we're going to have coaching not only from Glory, but also from our own experts. And it's that being able to move from the what you see in a video or in a academic setting or a classroom setting and then actually move that to say, this is will apply to my business and how it applies and so forth. So.
Yeah, so it's not just the course like you can buy on any platform. It's a consulting package that has a digital delivery, but there's live one-on-one coaching with you and anyone on your team, company team. So I think each course comes with 6 hours, however you want to break it up. Anything from high level to very specific legal, regulatory, judicial issues. Chris, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, what is, if at some point as you grow along, you want to set up a U.S. presence, one of the other things that I mentioned, we do have a program to actually help companies set up a U.S. presence. We're calling a soft landing package. Basically, we take care of the main issues of where you can have a temporary office, getting incorporated, all the legal registrations, finding employees, finding understanding the legal tax issues. There's a lot of things to do there, but we have done that with a number of companies, and then that's something that we are rapidly expanding. As Michael mentioned, LA is a great place to launch in the United States. That's what our experience is, and we're very firm believers in that. So if you want more information, you can find there on our in our website, iba.io, and there's a section there on Inbound LA.
Yeah. Los Angeles has a real beach, and we have plenty of venture capital money. We're much cheaper than San Francisco, which doesn't have a beach, really expensive to live in, and their money comes with a lot of ties. Where Los Angeles, home of Hollywood, is very creative and collaborative. So, and we have better weather.
Better weather.
Yeah,
and more fun people. What can I say?
Definitely. Everyone here is a lot more fun and jovial and collaborative and friendly, as opposed to the cutthroats of Silicon Valley. So anyway, that's our opinion.
So that's what we have to say. This morning in terms of a formal presentation. We're here now to answer your questions, and last thing, thank you, Glory, for giving us this opportunity to present, and we're here to answer your questions.
Yeah, this is the fun part for us.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. On behalf of the participants, thank you very much, Chris and Michael. This has been very enlightening. In fact, I've been getting some offline. You're quite right that WhatsApp is very big in Nigeria. So there's some groups where I shared the link, and one of the participants went back to the group to say that the knowledge on the webinar is, it's a great opportunity. People don't need to miss it, and so lots of people have joined. I think we now have almost 20 participants on the call. So I think everyone here has really gotten a lot of value. So in terms of questions, I have 8 questions from people. I don't know, will you be able to take them all?
Sure.
Okay. If we can, yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So
it's morning here. It depends on how late you guys want to stay up.
Okay. All right, that's fine. Okay, so the first person, she says her interest is in exporting raw agricultural commodities like ginger, hibiscus flowers, etc. So she would like to know how to identify buyers and how to engage them.
Michael?
Sure. The number one way to identify buyers, although the caveat is with the coronavirus, this may not be the way to do it in the next year or two, is the Natural Products Expo events. There are 2 of them, one on the East Coast and one on the West Coast. So there's Natural Product Expo East and Natural Product Expo West. It's the largest meeting place of food, beverage, supplements, ingredients, etc. I don't have the.
Yeah, they were supposed to have the one here in the West Coast in near
Anaheim.
in Anaheim this weekend, but it was canceled because of the coronavirus. But it still is the place, and probably in 6 months when the other one occurs, that'll be definitely it. The other thing for agricultural products, you're going to have to make sure you comply with all the phytosanitary requirements. Just basically ensure that the products are safe. Most of which the products you mentioned are not particularly onerous in terms of those, but your logistics provider will be able to go through that. Also, you can find out more from that website there that I listed with the International Trade Commission. It does have some links on phytosanitary requirements, and most of that comes through either the U.S. Department of Agriculture or which does the administering of the phytosanitary, and the Food and Drug Administration in terms of applied products. So that's on the regulatory side, but finding customers doing that. So Michael, what would you suggest if now that, until we get things back into more normal path for finding?
Yeah, so there are two major entities. If you're doing ginger, hibiscus, and others, there are two publications that essentially run the industry here, and they each put on an expo. So the first one was the Natural Products, and that's the bigger, more consumer show, and that's put on by, I'm looking it up here. Contact me afterwards. I'll get you the information. The other one is called Supply Side. There's a Supply Side East and a Supply Side West. I just put that in the link. That's more for ingredients, ingredient manufacturers, ingredient buyers, and that's run by a different media publication. And forgive me, I've been out of this sector for a few years, so I can't remember. But that's all about ingredients. So they have a range of tools, import, export, distribution. You can certainly see the competition. So those are my two suggestions.
Okay, I think that was extremely helpful, and definitely the lady in question will contact you for the additional information like you offered. Okay, so we have the second question is, so this lady is into natural products and she makes herbal supplements. She has a product reader and in fact a range of products. So evidently she has a product that she has paid FDA, that she has an FDA, that I think an approval from the US agency to ship, and she has managed to get to the US. However, her challenge is getting big distributors in the US because they want assurances that a competitor won't just come to Nigeria, buy. Patrice, can you mute your microphone if you're not speaking? Thank you. Okay, so like I said, she's gotten FDA approval for one of her products. She's in the US already, but she wants and the big distributor that she's trying to partner with are a bit skeptical because they believe that an American citizen can come to Nigeria, bypass the requirements and all the export payments, because she has tried to do hers in line with all the export requirements, and she's paid, but all those costs are loaded on the product. So the big distributors are saying, can't someone just come to Nigeria and get it into the US cheaper, because maybe the person is a citizen, so the person is able to bypass a lot of the requirements and standards of the SDA, and then of course their product will be more competitive than hers. So I hope the question is clear.
Yeah, that might be a human to human issue. Yeah, because I know that there are increased expenses, certainly if you're going to go for the ISO certification and the other certification.
I think also too, in terms of the the big, one of the problems, for example, is like selling to a U.S. big, large company, for example, not so much for this one, but say for a retail product, selling to a Walmart or somebody like that, is that they want large volumes. Okay, and that can be a real killer. So what the thing to do is to look for smaller distributors, smaller companies, and if you lock yourself into one large one, you lose a lot of leverage in the whole process. It's tempting because of the extra, because it'll reduce your costs, no doubt about that. So this is sort of a business decision, how much risk you want to put in terms of dealing with one larger distributor versus the smaller ones. You can certainly always differentiate yourself in terms of your quality of your product and of your service. And as we were mentioning earlier, you want to have, if your presence, if you do like an Amazon or a Walmart or something like that, you want to have something that's your own presence in addition to that. I mean, the ideal thing would be is if you could sell a lot of your products directly, doing e-commerce, doing it directly. So there's a lot of openings in the U.S. market. There's certainly a tendency to look for the big distributors, which can be overwhelming and can also bankrupt your business. Going in slow, small, finding your niche. There's so many niches in the U.S. Market, and just providing superior quality in terms of product and service, I think is a strategy.
So, Adeola, are you talking about ingredients or a finished product?
Adeola, can you help? They're asking a question. Hello?
Yeah.
Adeola, okay.
Are you talking about ingredients or a finished product?
I'm talking about finished products. Finished products already labeled for the
I think
US market.
it's going to be difficult to get products that are not labeled correctly for the U.S. market into the U.S., particularly in large shipments, which will be
I think the
checked.
keyword is large. People get to move them in smaller shipments.
In smaller ones?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I know there's a vigilance on the border to check these things. I guess if they're moving them in through smaller shipments, as long as their MSDS documents are okay, they could come in. But that's going to make it a lot more expensive, though, if they're bringing them in smaller quantities.
Okay.
All right. Okay. Thank you. So I think the point is taken that perhaps he needs to look at smaller distributors, who might, and then find his niche and then go from there. Yeah. Okay. Then the third question is on tax. So the question is, the person, so it's still Adeolu, he has an account opened in the US, but he has no clue about what tax breaks or tax costs would be. So is there a volume of business that he needs to do before tax becomes a thing? So like, for instance, in Nigeria, we just passed the finance bill that says if you're making below 25 million naira revenue, you don't have to pay tax. So is there any such thing in the US?
There are two things. One is if you're just importing, then you're going to, as I mentioned, particularly if you're doing e-commerce kinds of solutions, that you'll be, generally it's expected that you'll be collecting the state sales tax. That's honored more for the larger ones, not so much for the smaller ones. And there's really no hard, fast things, but you're supposed to collect it. The enforcement is difficult they're not going to be looking to enforce it on very small, occasionally importers. In terms of if you are having any sort of physical, a company, a corporate presence in the United States, There are a lot of questions in terms of transfer pricing, profits, other kinds of payments, withholding that's required, and so forth. And again, those are, for the smaller companies, for the occasional ones, that's, you're not going to get anybody's radar for the time being, but you should just start planning to do that as a matter of course when you're starting out. So, do I have a particular number threshold? No. The answer is, it's something you should be aware of from the beginning, and working with your accountants on how to collect taxes and tax them off. In terms of the, particularly when you have entities in the United States going back to Nigeria, the tax splits and so forth. So that gets more complicated. Michael?
Generally speaking, a small business in the U.S. isn't expected to make a profit for 3 years. So you can write anything you want. Well, sorry, not anything. You can write as much as you think you can off against your profits or revenues, and usually don't check, or they say okay, it seems reasonable. And after 3 years, if you haven't made any money, then they start asking questions. So travel and all sorts of things.
Okay, sorry, I have a question. So
Sure.
you said that a company isn't expected to make profit for the first 3 years. So, so is that revenue or profit?
Well, I mean, that's from the eyes of the Internal Revenue Service, our tax collector.
Okay.
So they say if a company hasn't made revenue or profit for 3 years, that's not unusual.
Okay.
So it could be both. You could spend a lot of money on research and development and not make money, and it's not going to raise any red flags.
Okay.
It's a general approach.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right, thank you.
But yeah, I don't think there's a threshold of when you have to start paying money. It's not like VAT tax where they say, okay, at this point you have to do X, Y, Z.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Then the next question: how easy is it to do a distributor and agent model, possibly a network marketing model in the US?
Network marketing model?
Yes.
It's not very difficult. Yeah, the difficult part is the recruiting and maintaining customers, as opposed to the resellers, the independent representatives, right?
Okay.
There is a separate section of laws and rules and regulations for network marketing. It comes under the, I think it's the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission. So there's certain rules that you can't make claims saying this woman made this much money and this man made this much money. You have to say that it's not typical. There are a lot of they require transparency in the messaging and marketing and the claims. But setting up a network marketing company from the administrative point of view is standard to any other.
And it's a good thing. It's also too is the contract, and it's having a good lawyer, either one. If you have one locally in, say, Nigeria, that somebody has experience with doing contract law in the United States, or if not, to find somebody who can review it here in the United States for you.
Yeah, but there are attorneys who specialize specifically in network marketing and affiliate marketing, because it's a different subsection of regulation. But to answer the general question, it's a little bit more difficult than setting up a standard company with standard distribution, only because you have to pay more attention to it, but it doesn't cost any more. It doesn't take any more time.
Yeah.
Does that answer the question?
Yes. Okay. Thank you very much.
I've done it. So if there's specific questions, have them contact me.
Okay, all right. So the next one is about the food industry. So for physical product imports into the US, we've heard what you said about there being standards and regulations, but the person asking the question has also heard that products can be held for the least reason. So is there a possibility of need, the need to pay gratification or, not bribes in the sense of bribes, but, just to some kind of extra payments to facilitate the process? Is there any?
No, 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 that creates more problems.
Okay, okay. So,
yeah, you find an expert and you create the product, and if you have to, you spend the money to send the product to the United States so the expert can take it to the FDA or USDA. FDA is Food and Drug Administration. USDA is the United States Department of Agriculture. There's some agencies there, and you give them the product, and they respond with an official declaration and decision that your product is this, it's correct, and your harmonized tariff code is this. So for example, I did a product with coffee and probiotics, and obviously I wanted my tax rate, my tariff rate, sorry, to be coffee and not probiotics. So I asked the FDA and the Border Patrol, and they said, no, it has to be probiotics. But the important part is they said, okay, this is a dietary supplement with probiotics. So they had already seen it and they okayed it and they made a decision. So if there were any problems, I had this piece of paper from the government saying it's okay. So if you're going to spend the money to send the products up here to make sure that they're okay, get a decision ahead of import, and that'll be the better spent money.
okay, all right, thank you. Then the next question is about Prosper Africa. So we understand that there's a program that the US government has instituted to improve bilateral trade agreements and relationships between the US and Africa. So what are the benefits? Are there any benefits to African companies that this program offers for people wanting to come to the US?
Okay, there's the program's been put out there. A lot of the details, even though it's been over a year, are still coming out. The idea is to provide technical assistance in helping companies, African companies, enter the U.S. market. Also to for U.S. companies to sell their products and to making investments into Africa. The amounts of money right now, it's under a number of different agencies. We've been working with the U.S. Department of Commerce on this one, and they are looking at it to, provide information, technical information to help companies come into the U.S. market. Not a lot of details.
Yeah.
Michael, any thoughts on that further?
We know about it, but the specifics we're still learning because we want to tap in to the funds in the program to obviously do more of what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
So we don't know the specifics.
Okay.
Yeah.
Some people say it's for infrastructure. Some people say it's to compete against the Chinese. Some people say it's, we don't quite know. So sorry, we don't have an answer for that.
Yeah.
But when we do know, we'll come back and try to implement the programs.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, so another question is on M&A. So assuming a company is in talks with an American-based company and is a potential target for mergers and acquisitions. So are there benefits but the company is currently based in Nigeria. So are there benefits to registering in the US, or is it better to remain as an African-based company for the purpose of this M&A?
I think the best person to answer that would be the accountant in the acquiring company.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that
Funny
I think
case.
that would be really specific to which companies are working together.
Okay.
It's not to not give an answer on this one, but there are just literally so many variables there. It depends whether there are tax treaties between the countries, and the ease to which you can move the monies back and forth between the countries. Some countries make it more difficult to move money in or out. So yeah, there are very bright people who think about these all the time. That's like, for example, we, have the KPMG as a partner. They've got some people in it. There are other ones out there that certainly do that. We had just recently helped one of our clients acquire a company in London, and so even that had, even though it was a small merger, it was still had a lot of tax issues that we helped them think through. Not so much us, but our resources.
And there are different relationships you can create between a Nigerian company and an affiliated U.S. company. They could be a branch, it could be a completely separate entity, it could be a master distributor relationship. They're different structures, usually based on the benefits of the finance, right? Tax burden, where you want to keep the money, where you want to move the profits, where do you want to claim most of your costs, et cetera.
Okay.
Again, I think it's mostly an accountant. An accountants, but I don't know. It really depends on the two companies, I would think.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Then I think we have 2 more questions. So this one is, so there's a fabric called Ankara in Nigeria. It's a locally manufactured product, very bright and colorful, and it's the person that is asking this question wants to start making outfits out of that fabric and exporting it to the US, but she doesn't have any contacts in the US. So so she's just wondering, first of all, if she would be able to do this without having some kind of presence in America. For now, she has a social media and she has a website and social media. So would that suffice, or would she have to have some other presence in the US? And then, yeah, so I think that's a basic question. Can she do this as an e-commerce company online, or would she have to have
I think you can start it online. Chris, you want to answer that? Because I have to get my power cord for my laptop.
Yeah, when you're doing that, yeah, it's a lot of it you can do online. Again, working with the logistics provider, make sure all of that is very clear. The other thing is as you're growing, they are a number of. Is this what's the material made out of?
Cotton, I think.
Cotton. Okay, yeah. So there are some requirements as to proving origins and so forth that get into some more complicated kind of tax things dealing with that. There are as you get larger, there may be the advantage of having a physical presence. We've been working with a person of ours who's a trade expert, and he's also a customs broker, and he has a number of Peruvian companies that are manufacturing children's clothing. So we're trying to figure out ways that it'll make it easier for them to be the importers of record rather than having somebody else be the larger importers. If you're doing B2C kinds of sales, you can do it initially online. If you start doing more in B2B, then you're going to need to have somebody. It may be advantageous at some point to have a physical presence, so you can be both the exporter and the importer and save yourself a lot of costs in the whole process.
Okay, thank you.
Michael?
Okay,
Yeah,
sorry.
I'm looking for the guy that I would recommend. He's works down the street from us. He travels all around the world, knows everything like the back of his hand. He has presence in Lagos. So let me put his information. Okay, he might be able to answer the initial questions.
Okay.
And I know that he has some colleagues there on the ground.
Yeah.
Assuming the question came from a Nigerian.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Then, last but not least, questions about it's a general question about access to finance. So, are there facilities, or grants that companies, African companies trying to come to the US can access?
Not a lot. Hopefully, if we get Prosper Africa functioning, then there will be, more in the terms of the technical assistance, things that can be provided there. There's certainly a lot of, working through trade associations and so forth. There's always an interest to expand the markets and so forth. And getting back to Prosper Africa, there's a number of initiatives in general from the U.S. government, U.S. Agency for International Development, USAID, and also a number of non-governmental organizations, NGOs that are providing that. Grants, no. Technical assistance, they're out there and working to, we can bring you in touch with it, or we can, as things go along, expand our own offerings in that area. Michael,
And one of the conversations we've had with Lori is putting together an accelerator cohort of friends and colleagues there, and we three of us could work with. I'm hearing a lot of food and supplement and ingredient inquiries. We can easily put together a 90-day accelerator format where we bring in startups and the founders and we address all these issues, one-on-one more thoroughly, yet at the same time, so everybody learns together. And if we do that, the expectation is in 90 days. You will be ready to have your product or service here in the U.S. It takes a lot of work, but if you want to sign up for the program, that's what we expect. And to answer this question is, we would immediately turn around to agencies and groups and foundations to ask for underwriting for a program like this to discount the cost.
Yeah.
Everything from a Nigerian. Oh, it's snowing outside. I bet you guys didn't think it snowed in Los Angeles. Sorry, I just looked out the window. What are they saying? Oh, Nigerian consulate. Sometimes they have some money to put towards these things, or or at least facilitate those kind of relationships. Chris and I know plenty that might be able to help subsidize a program like that. So it's one of the things we're thinking about. We'd love to do. So I'll just mention it there, and of course that comes with asking for funding.
Yeah. Okay.
But specifically for Africa, I don't think we know any offhand. We certainly haven't heard of any. I mean, the same way they don't really exist, for Asia or for the EU. It's usually more specific.
Okay, well, I think that's a great point to end on. So you had it, guys. If you're interested in learning more, indicate interest in the 90-day accelerator. We also have an online course that gives you what you need to know alongside customized coaching tailored to the needs of your business. So on that note, I would like to thank Chris and Michael once again for making it available for this webinar. And we look forward to connecting with many of you on these products offline. So thank you very much, Michael. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah,
And
it's our fun.
we're always available.
Yeah.
You know, if you have questions, you know, look on us as a resource to help you on your path to establishing profit and fun and livelihood here in North America.
Thank you so much. All right. Take care, everyone. Bye.
All right.
Good afternoon.
Okay.
All
Thanks,
right.
Laurie.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.